Bleav in Everything Auburn is brought to you by Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on the $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. When the game's over, head on over to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of the over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online. The game starts here. War Eagle, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bleav in Everything Auburn. Taylor Davis and Jason Campbell. We welcome you in after another crazy week of college football. And unfortunately, not the result that we were hoping for our Tigers. It's been a few days. Hopefully, the dust has settled a little bit and it's not going to sting as much to revisit this one as it did Saturday night, Sunday, maybe even Monday. But we've got to turn the page as best we can and look ahead to New Mexico, who comes to town before quite a stretch of conference matchups, which is definitely the part of season that we have all had circled in the past few months. So this is the game that you got to figure it all out. So Jay and I are here to break it all down, talk a little bit about what the heck happened and what we anticipate we'll see come week 3 and what this team can do to turn it around. So welcome in, Jay Cam. And game aside, how was the weekend in Auburn? Your year 2 on the radio. How's it going?
Yeah, first week was kind of like a preseason game for me. Just trying to get back into the flow, calling games and, seeing the game in action. I do my best that I can to give people a view of what they're looking at. If they're not watching the game on TV, but most people link our radio to the TV.
I've seen that a lot.
So I try to do everything I can to explain it in a way as if I was calling it on TV as well.
Yeah. No, you absolutely crush it, and I can tell that you enjoy it. You told me, I guess it was last season, that it's the next best thing from playing anymore. So I love that you're doing it year 2, and I myself am going to be joining you on the plains this weekend. I am so excited that I will be working as the sideline reporter this weekend, so it will be a homecoming for me as well, and I'm pumped to get to cover this team on the heels of a very disappointing and deflating loss. And we're going to get into it. But real quickly, I just wanted to mention something that I got the opportunity to do because only a handful of us got to do it. I actually just walked in the door from the airport coming back from Dallas. I had the opportunity, along with 12 other ESPN broadcasters, to go to Grapevine, Texas, the same exact conference room setup that the College Football Playoff Committee participates in the rankings every week, as well as the final ranking for the playoff. And this year with the new seeding structure in the 12-team playoff, and we got to participate in a mock playoff, which was so cool. We actually got this whole binder. If you're watching on YouTube, or if you're not watching on YouTube, I have it with me. They gave us this whole binder, and the entire thing has some of the data points that they get for every single team. I'm talking all 133 FBS teams are in here. Their final schedule at the end of the year, offensive stats, defensive stats, strength of schedule, how they match up to the rest of the country. And it is seriously every single team. And we went through the entire process. It is 7 rounds of voting, and had the same debates and conversations and dilemmas that the playoff has, or the playoff committee has. And we used last year's situation as the mock version that we did this year. So it was basically as of December 3rd last year, right after conference championships, rank the 25, and then obviously the 4 teams that made the playoff. But then we also flipped it to the structure of what it's going to be like this year with the 12-team playoff, but used those results. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because it highlighted a point that I really hadn't thought about a ton. When we ended up with our final 25, our top 25, we had Michigan at 1, which is the Big Ten champion, and the top 4 ranked conference champions take the top 4 spots. So it actually ended up being Michigan at 1, Texas at 2 as the SEC champion, Florida State at 3 as the ACC champion, and get this, Arizona as the 4 because they would this year be the highest ranked Big 12 champion the way it sits right now.
That sets up.
Because Texas joined the SEC, and so it bumped Alabama and Georgia out of the top 4. What is also interesting is the top-ranked group of 5 conference champion automatically goes to the 12. So we had Liberty as our top-ranked group of 5. They did have an undefeated season, but their strength of schedule was not comparable. So we actually had them as like our 24 team, but they automatically bump to 12. So with Arizona and Liberty both being conference champions, regardless of the fact that they were ranked outside of the top 12, they immediately take up 2 spots, which meant Penn State and Oklahoma both fell out of the playoff. So if you're analyzing your season this year, your pursuit of the 11 or 12 spot ain't going to be enough. Like you need to be looking inside that top 10 because the investment on the conference champions is likely going to end up knocking out teams that are actually better than them.
Wow. So I got a lot of work to do is what you're saying.
100%. I think a lot of teams do. And it was an element of it that I really hadn't thought about how drastic that could end up being, and really impressive teams, 2 lost teams potentially could end up out because we are still emphasizing conference champions. So conference championship week is going to be huge. Just because the playoff expanded, you're going to see really potentially more viable teams not make it because they have to make room for the conference champions.
So what about your runner-up in the Big Ten and the SEC?
That's going to depend on where they ended up ranking. So for us, as the mock committee that we were on, we had Alabama followed by Georgia. So those would remain within the 5 to 8 because we bumped Florida State at 3, Arizona at 4. Who did that bump down? Washington. Because Washington, the Pac-12 is no more. So that had Washington at 5, even though they were undefeated. So like, it's not, the final seeding is not going to rank based on what the committee views or who the committee views as the best teams. Like you could have undefeated once again and light it up, star power, strength of schedule, whatever. But without a conference championship, you're automatically the highest you can be is 5. It was wild to visualize.
Makes sense. So they're what they're doing is making sure that if you become a conference champion, that you get the right, above anybody else.
Basically, to make sure that what happened last year doesn't happen again, where
it's fair.
The Florida State resume, an undefeated power at the time 5 champion, you would think they're a shoe-in, but there were other intangibles. And to be completely frank, we all agreed. We all had honestly, our ranking had Florida State under Georgia. So like when we looked at the data and we all did our debates and dilemmas and whatever, we didn't even have Florida State at 5. We had them at 6. So, but that last year's situation really highlighted how much the playoff structure was lacking, because it really was not going to take care of all the problems that emerged last year. And last year was a unique situation, but prevalent nonetheless. And so it was so eye-opening to see. And I'm so glad I got to do that opportunity, because I think it's going to help me talk about it in a more educated way the closer we get to this new system. But it was very eye-opening that like, these teams that think like, 12 spots, like we're it.
It's not as easy, right?
Not as easy. And we are going to sit
here. Been one of the top 4 teams last year, even though they lost in the SEC championship. They were still one of the top 4 best teams.
They were one of the best teams, and that becomes a debating point every single year. And the people who were leading the entire practice were kept reiterating, this is not the teams that deserve to play for a national champion. These are the best teams by the end of season. Best, not most deserving. You do get the opportunity to see some of these choose it themselves instead of putting such a narrow decision in the hands of the committee.
They would have went in ahead because they won the conference championship, and then they
based on this structure. Yes,
Georgia would have failed. Georgia would have been like 5 or 6.
So it was really interesting. I am very grateful and appreciative that I got the chance to do that. If anyone has any questions, if you're kind of confused on the new playoff system, what the committee is prioritizing, conversations that were had, feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in future episodes, because it was a peek behind the curtain that not very many of us get. So I was really grateful to get to do that. But we have a job to do, and that is to discuss what in the world happened on the Plains this past weekend. As difficult as it was, let's get into it a little bit so we can turn the page very quickly. Auburn falls week 2 at home to Cal in a game that you really felt like needed to be a win. I understand, in the same vein of talking about the new playoff system, that one loss doesn't necessarily end your season unless you're Notre Dame. But I digress. However, when you look at Auburn's schedule and you look at the why behind that loss, it does feel a bit heavier than the reality of one loss in week 2 not ending your season. So let's get into it. Auburn unfortunately loses 21-14 to Cal. Give credit where credit is due. I thought Cal looked strong. They looked fit. They looked veteran. Big shout out to their quarterback as well. I thought he played well even when he was banged up. And their defense and special teams, I mean, pinning us inside the 10 that many times as an offense that can't get into a rhythm, game changer. So hats off to Cal. But that's not really what we're here to talk about, the back and forth of the game. We got to talk about what problems still lie in Auburn, because they were on display. And once again, there are offensive woes. And Hugh Freeze said he thought that we were further along, and I want to know why we're not. And so in the same breath of giving Cal's defense credit, give me your take on the offense. We're going to talk Payton, we're going to talk quarterback, but offensive scheme, game plan, offensive line, lack of rhythm, what the heck happened?
Well, the MVP of the game is Cal's punter, right? Pinning us
seriously
so deep back in that territory, making us have to drive 90-some yards to have to score points. And, that's very, very tough when you got an offense pinned back. You can send different defenses at that offense.
Right.
So, but overall, the game was still kind of one. If you look at the quarterback play of Cal, Mendoza was very good in the pocket in the first half. Anytime he scrambled up to run, he didn't look to run. He would scramble up and keep his eyes downfield. He kept finding guys to keep drives going.
Yeah.
Those are the things that get you into a rhythm as an offense. The more plays you're able to stay on the field and convert on third downs gives you the opportunity to get a rhythm. That's where Auburn offense fell off. The first drive, we're moving the ball. Payton get outside the pocket. He makes some throws, end up with a Lambert Smith touchdown in the end zone. And all of a sudden after that, it's like we just start sputtering. And I think a lot of the reason we're sputtering is I think we looked to pass too much in the first half. I think we probably should have leaned more on running the football. I understand that, we got these weapons and you got all these new pieces, but at the end of the day, you still win football games by establishing the run game. And second half, we got to the run game. And you saw what we was able to do when we started running the football, very successful. We started moving the ball better. I think in the first half, after the first drive, we kept stalling. It was whether we missed the block, they had a wide receiver wide open and quarterback getting hit or having to scramble, whether the quarterback missing a wide open receiver, on the route that's wide open, whether, we not picking up a blitz or maybe we dropping the ball. It was just one thing after another.
Agreed.
And at the end of the day, if they took away 15 plays away from that game, you got to feel sick to your stomach, because those 15 plays could have won the game by at least 2 scores. We had guys running open, sometimes pressure, we're missing throws, and they were dropping balls. It's just a lot of different things that make an offense great.
Yep.
we didn't do. And like I said, it's one game. It's one game. But at the end of the day, I told everybody we played a preseason game, game one. I
Yep.
said the game that we would find out how far we've really come will be the Cal game. And I think there are a lot of reasons why a lot of people feel like, "Ah, man, they're so disappointed. They just, a little upset. It's because the high hopes, all the momentum that was built over the summertime. You talk about, the new pieces that came in. You talk about recruiting. You talk about, Payton Thorne being an established senior. Things that which we'll get into the quarterback talk in a minute.
Yeah.
That you want to see Jarquez and all these guys coming back. You're thinking you should be further along. I'm with coach on that. You should be further along. But then you go and you play against someone that's, of the same similar competition. And it shows same things that showed up in the Maryland game and the bowl game showed up again in this game.
Right.
And and offensively, we just couldn't get it going. And a lot of that's a testament to everybody. But at the end of the day, how are you going to respond?
Yeah.
Because this is a week we play New Mexico and they're coming in here. You can't forget New Mexico State last year, how they came in here and this was their championship game.
Right.
Mexico's coming here with the same attitude. They've had some tough losses here late. They want to try to rewrite the script, and the only
Yeah.
way to do that is knocking off an Auburn team, right?
Mhm.
And Auburn's got to come in with the mindset of we got to show that we can respond and we got to start fast. If we come into this ball game and start slow offensively, you know, things can kind of unravel quickly
Right.
because your confidence starts to get shot a little bit.
Yeah.
So we got to come in to have some big plays from an offensive standpoint. But I feel like overall it was a handful of different things. We got to pick up blitzes better. We got to pick up TE and ET stunts. What I mean by that is the 2D linemen just kind of crossing each other, and you got to pass it off to the other guy.
Right.
And those type of guys, those things we can't miss. Like we got to work on those things and communication, and hit the me to you. You hear me say it all the time. The me to you when don't make easy plays look hard, and I feel like
And
that's what Auburn's offense did on Saturday.
yeah.
The easy plays just look hard to make,
Mhm.
and when that is happening, that means people are pressing.
Yep.
Everybody needs to stop pressing. And when you're pressing, the best thing to do to get that off you, just start running the football and settle everybody down.
Well, and that's what, Hugh alluded to a little bit. He was asked in his early week press conference if when he watched the film back, if he regretted not running the ball more. And he basically was saying that he felt like they did run the ball a good bit. And really it does come back to field position once again. They did, establish some run, gain some yardage, get out of your own end zone. But then you got to have some passing to help, add some versatility and get you further down the field. And you were never able to see them get into a rhythm with that allowed the ground game to take off and have some explosives. But I do think it seemed to be working, and that's why it got a little confusing. Why aren't we running Jarquez more? But he also, has mentioned the offensive line issues. Tutal Miller is once again not expected to go this week. So you've got Dylan Wade and some rotation that will continue to happen along the offensive line, which is never great. Continuity across the offensive line, I think, is the most important position that you need continuity in. So I don't take away from any of that. But here's my thing, and I think this is why there has been frustration, is that there's been, you mentioned the offseason and the hype. I don't even necessarily know that it was just excitement around Auburn winning. It really was, this offense is going to be better. This offense is going to look better. And here we are, week 2. This game, I felt like I was back in 2023. This looked 100% like the offense that we saw on the field last year. And we've added some of the most insane targets that we are going to have at Auburn. And yes, the offensive line did not do great in pass pro, but there were several where it was on Payton. And I don't want to add to the pylon that this kid is dealing with, because I know it's been requesting him money on Venmo. Like, don't you have a job? Like, what are you doing with your time that you are doing that?
Yeah.
But here's my thing. And Hugh has said it for the past several months. You are our starting quarterback. You have the reins. but there is an expectation of performance that you've got to hold up. And at what point have we seen enough? I even think people, and not that you're doing this to appease the public. That's not what you're doing, because you're never going to be able to please everybody. But if you are genuinely trying to win games, and this guy has shown you time and time and time again that he can't get it done, at what point do we say, okay, you know what? There is a chance that this younger guy is not going to be able to get it done for us either. But in the long term play, it's better to let him start going. Like we have seen, in my opinion, everything that we are going to see from Payton Thorne. He is a 5th-year starter in college football. At what point do we call a spade and say, Payton has his bright spots and Payton is doing a great job in practice, but Payton can't win us ball games. And at the end of the day, he's done after this year anyway. So give a young guy an opportunity to start that work, start laying the foundation, and make something happen for the longevity of the program.
Let's see here. I'll say this. Watching that ball game, I think I was a little disappointed with decision making, more so than missed throws. You take me to the 4th and 2. So you got 2 inside slants. You got a receiver outside press with Cam and everything. So the Cam's running a fade. It's not a high percentage throw on 4th and 2. If it's 3rd and 1 and it's press, no safety, take your shot.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna come back and go for it on 4th and 1. But when it's 4th and 2, you always take the high percentage throws. You get a blitz. Both inside receivers are running wide open on slants. Take the inside slant, get the first down, move the chains.
Yep.
The other thing is, Payton, we know he's elusive. We know he can run. But the difference between him and Mendoza, what I watched the other day, Mendoza, when he looked to run, it was to pass first. So when he moved up in the pocket, his eyes stayed downfield, and he was able to keep finding guys. When Payton looked to run and took off the run, his eyes immediately went to the rush and went to who can I beat, when I'm scrambling.
Right.
Because there are guys that are open, but he has to understand that, look, people have seen you as a runner. So when you go to run, keep your eyes downfield, because you're going to bring up the linebackers, you're going to bring up the safeties, and you're going to have receivers at the second level and tight ends at the second level. They're going to be wide open.
It could be an even bigger play.
Yeah, because of your running ability. So I think he has to learn to keep his eyes downfield and not get caught up looking at the rush, or can I beat this guy with my speed?
Right.
There are guys open that's going to help him as a quarterback, because instead of those guys running up from now on, they're going to start looking for the guys behind them if he starts throwing the ball to him.
That's very true.
So those 2 things to me was very critical. The other thing is, don't make one series worse. What I mean, so if I have a bad series, I have a turnover, the next series, I don't need to do the same as that thing. What I mean by that is, some of his interception was thrown off his back foot.
Yeah.
And when you're throwing the ball off your back foot, it's never good as a quarterback. You can't get velocity on the ball. You can't be accurate like you want to be.
Sure.
And you just, you're basically throwing up Hail Marys.
Yeah.
And that's what it looks like on a couple of those interceptions. Was, I'm not sure, but I'm just going to throw this ball off my back foot. And him being a 5th-year senior and a veteran quarterback, he has to get to the point where, I understand you have a clock in your head sometimes, and sometimes things are happening faster than you want it to. But as a veteran quarterback, you got to calm everybody else down on offense and keep your poise, because people are looking at how you're handling the situation.
100%.
So if you're out there on the football field and things are kind of unraveling, calm everybody down. If you've gone a couple of series, you haven't been able to hit some downfield throws, take some check downs, get yourself back into the rhythm, see the ball get in somebody's hands, and get your confidence back flowing. Those are things as veteran quarterbacks you have to understand mentally, like, okay, how do I get myself back into the game?
Yep.
And I just feel like for him, there's a lot of things where he looked like he was pressing, like after he threw the first interception, then he threw the second interception. And then the last 2 was just, was really hard to watch, because he threw those very unsure himself. Even the one where Cam was hurt, you got to read that out, because Cam was running a fade route, but he was getting pressed towards the sideline.
Right.
There was no room to throw the ball. Even if
No.
even if you do like the matchup, once you look over there, It doesn't matter how great a guy is. If he's getting suppressed to the sideline and there's no room to throw that ball, and you just throw basically a high ball and leave it inside, that's for the defender all
Yeah,
day.
that's so true.
You got to keep your eyes on the safety. Once you
Yeah.
come up safety's floor, and you go look the cam, he's getting hard pressed. That means your eyes and your feet got to come back to what? The seam ball. So I know that progression. That progression goes 1, 2 across the board. So you're gonna look to throw number one. If the safety goes over top or he's getting hard pressed to the sideline, your eyes and feet immediately bring you back to the seam, which Robert Lewis was wide open for about 20 yards down the middle of the field on the seam.
Wow.
If he just brings his eyes and feet, he hits
Right.
Robert Lewis for 20-yard gain down the middle of the field. And
Right.
this was with 2 minutes and something to go in the game. So after 4 turnovers, we still got a chance to win the game, which tells me that this team is better than it was last year, because a team last year with 4 turnovers, it gets uglier. But the
True.
defense is really good up front. And then you look at the situation we was in, you have 4 turnovers and you still got a chance to drive the ball and send this game into overtime. You got to keep your poise as a quarterback. Now, where do we go from here? Well,
Can
if
I
you
ask you one question real quick?
yeah.
The Cam Coleman thing, why, and I apologize if this is a dumb question. Why didn't Cam hit the deck?
Yeah, he could have hit the. That's something
Stop the clock.
that's a young
Clearly, no one's realizing how hurt you are. Lay down.
yeah, that's a young player. You in a 2-minute situation, right? So everybody's going fast. And he's probably at the time he gets hurt, he's not realizing, like, let me just stay on the ground and then,
They're gonna stop the clock.
stop the clock.
Okay.
But or try to wave somebody in real quick. But I think he
He
was
did. He was waving at the sideline and pointing at his shoulder, and no one
Just
was
kinda
paying
told him
attention.
straight
But I
in.
was like, "Kid, lay down."
Yeah. Yeah. And see, at that situation, I get it. Payton didn't see it. As a quarterback, that's hard to see because you're telling everyone here to get set and everything, but your eyes should have told you to go back to the other receiver, just because the way he was being hard pressed to the sideline. He was never
Right.
open from the get-go.
Right.
And everything. But just, moving forward, though, that's something that Cam will learn as well. It's if I'm injured, go down.
People are doing that when they're not injured.
Right, right. Slow down these offenses and stuff. So,
Yeah.
but moving forward, though, you have to send a message to your team. And what I mean by that is everybody's job is up. What I mean by that is everybody has to compete for their job.
Mm.
So it starts with the number one position, quarterback. So if your quarterback is not getting it done during a game, sometimes he has to be benched.
Yeah.
And, Peyton might have should have been benched the other day. And then you put in Hank and you see what he got.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that Peyton won't play another game or won't start another game. But in that situation, when you're trying to, do what's best for the team, because he has got to a point where he just became very turnover. Like, you can just see it and everything. And I know at the end of the day, it's hard to say I got to pull this guy, messing with his confidence, but he's a big guy. He's a big dude. He's 5 years in college ball. He knows how he has to respond. So at the end of the day, he probably should have been pulled. That's one. Two is this week you have to play both guys. At some point, Hank has to have reps. Why?
100%.
One, you need to put some pressure on Peyton a little bit. Hey, don't get comfortable that we're just going to roll with you regardless of how you're playing, And then two, we need to know what we have in Hank. He's still one play away from having to play, Taylor, and no one knows.
100%.
He still needs reps, one. And then two, everybody needs to kind of see, like, okay, what does this kid have?
Because here's my thing. I'm fearful that if you don't do it this week, you're screwing yourself more than giving Peyton a chance. And because here's the thing, if Peyton goes this week, I guarantee he's going to play well. That doesn't tell us anything. He played well in week 1. I need to see Peyton perform when the pressure is the highest and your back is against the wall and the game is on the line. He played great against Arkansas. We had a comfortable lead. He played great in week 1. He was more accurate. The explosive plays were going. We had a comfortable lead. The most comfortable lead we could have had. This game, time's going. Cal's got the momentum. And all he's doing is turning the ball over and making poor decisions. So Peyton going this week and having a lights out performance still tells me nothing. So I just think that if you don't give Hank the opportunity this week and then you end up absolutely needing him because Peyton reverts back to what he did week 2, you're going to force this kid to go get his first like big start against Arkansas or Oklahoma. Let him have it this week. Otherwise, you're not going to know really what he's capable of. And it may evoke something in Payton a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's true. Because if you think about it, if I'm not gonna get a shot now, when? If you're Hank, if you're not gonna get a shot now, when I'm going to get one? And the other thing is, like you say, you may light a match under Payton a little bit to
Yeah.
know, like, hey, what I'm doing, what happened in last week's game is unacceptable for me at the quarterback position.
Right.
And it's not going to be the detriment of the team to just keep rolling with you because we're worried about how you're going to feel about certain situations. Like we're
Exactly.
trying to win football games. So
Right.
at the end of the day, we have to do what's in the best interest for the football team. So if that means we have to sit you for a little bit and play another guy and see what this guy doing, it's for the betterment of the football team. Now,
Right.
it doesn't mean you stop competing. It doesn't mean you stop practicing hard. You're always still have to be one play away and be ready. So that's my whole thing with Hank. Hank's a redshirt freshman. I always felt like in the first game, he probably should have played most of the second half
Yeah.
just to get some experience, and then this game, he has to play to get some experience. Like I said, you cannot go out there this game and don't play him at all. And then all of a sudden, if things don't go right, you throw this kid out there against Arkansas, Oklahoma, Georgia. That's unfair. You got to give him reps in game like atmosphere.
Correct.
He played the fourth quarter of the bowl game. Yeah, that's in most of 2 minute situations. He played a little bit in the A&M game, but that was games way over. We need to get him
And
in a
not
game
much.
where it's competitive, and where things are kind of like, okay, see how he responds to situations, see how he responds to the environment,
Yeah.
see what his throwing skill. We know the kid can throw the ball, but let's just see what it looks like under the lights in an environment where it's competitive.
Well, and who are you when you're 3, 4, 5 drives into a game instead of being given a series at the very end when you've got a big lead, everyone's having fun, the stands are clearing out?
Yeah.
No, give this kid ample time to settle in to holding the steering wheel. He's never had that opportunity. And I understand the perspective of you don't pull a guy the second you see a lack of footing. You got to, sometimes it takes more time.
All right.
But in the case of Payton Thorne, he's had ample time. We gave him every opportunity last year. Hugh committed to him so hard this offseason, bringing him every possible weapon that he could have to be better, to the point that I would argue Payton doesn't even have to be spectacular. He just has to not put us in bad situations. And he
That's
put us in bad situations. So, like, I don't understand the logic behind, we'll give it time, let it settle in, let it settle in. We have. This is a year plus in the making of him at Auburn with this coaching staff, and now with incredible targets and a full offseason building the chemistry with them. Hank deserves the opportunity, and this team needs to see what it would actually be like with him at the helm before you're into a literally throw everything at the wall because season is about to be over if we don't against Arkansas or Oklahoma.
Well, you just said the key. The key is don't be the reason we lose games, by turning over the football and just giving, the opponent an opportunity to, get great field position and get points. Like,
Correct.
be the veteran quarterback. Are you going to throw an interception every now and then? Yes. Are you going to mess up every now and then? Yes. But you
Absolutely.
can't consistently, have these turnovers and put us in harm's way.
Right.
That's the problem. It's not like, oh, you can't make a mistake. No, that's not what people are saying. You can make mistakes because we're
Yeah.
all going to do it.
Yep.
It's just don't consistently put the ball in harm's way to hurt the football team.
Yes.
And that's our number one job as a quarterback, is to protect the football. And if you're not protecting the football, guess what they do to you? Put you on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what people are saying. Like, are you gonna miss throws every now and then? Yes, you're gonna miss throws.
The best do.
Right. So it's just find out when, like you just said, you said a while ago, when things are hard, don't make things worse.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing you can do, what's the worst thing I can do, is just give this team the ball turnovers.
Yeah.
The best thing you do is walk to the sideline and be able to punt the football. Give your defense an opportunity to go out there and defend the field and not have them defending a short field, which happened the other day.
Right.
So I just feel like this week is a huge week. It's almost a make it break it week for Payton. Almost, it's one of those weeks where he's probably gonna play,
Who
and
you
then
think he starts?
I don't know if he starts or not. I think they
Okay.
probably keep it quiet until game time. I think that's a protection thing. Like they do decide to start Payton to kind of keep the noise down. But if they decide not to, then I think they're going to roll with Hank. But I think it's everybody wait and see come Saturday. But I do expect to see both guys.
I do apologize if you're watching on YouTube and you were able to tell that things look a little bit different with the lighting. I got a phone call and I had to do some player interviews, and ironically, it's our competition. And the SID very conveniently started the conversation by saying, "Hey, don't let your Auburn show this week." I was like, "Damn, shots fired." Anywho, as we were saying, talking about the offense, not entirely sure what the plan is for these quarterbacks. Do you think that Coach Freeze is apprehensive about starting Hank because of the potential frenzy that could create? Or do you think he would not do it because he still wants Payton to feel like it's his? Who is he keeping in mind when making that decision?
I think he's always keeping a starter, right? You're always keeping Peyton in mind just because the simple fact that on one side, he's probably thinking, if I make this decision to start Hank, does that mean I'm done with Peyton completely this year? Like, because Peyton may take it that way or it may come off that way. So when
Yeah.
you make the decision to say that you're about to switch quarterbacks, even though the other quarterbacks should still be competing because it can just very well come right back to you.
Oh, yeah.
Just be a time where the coach may say, "Hey, I just want to sit you for a little bit and let you kind of calm, just kind of get yourself together. And then when I put you back out there, hopefully you'll be more prepared and ready to go. You
Yeah.
had a chance to take a deep breath. Sometimes coaches do that with starters. The other thing is if they decide to go with Hank and Hank does well, is Hank the guy moving forward? And
Right.
so you have to answer those questions. That's why I say I feel like the only thing to do is probably just play both guys and not don't do that Robbie Ashford and
Don't swap them the same drive for the
yeah,
love of
start
God.
the same drive and all of that type of stuff. I'm talking about like, if you get paid and say, hey, pay, you're gonna go so many, you know, series in a row, and then
Yeah.
hey, Hank, we're gonna give you a couple series in a row. But Peyton, if you're hot, then we may just keep rolling with you. If we get a good lead, then maybe we'll say, Hank, you'll play a little bit more in the second half than you normally have. So there's a couple of ways to go about it. It's a feel type of thing. As a coach, he has to feel it out and
Totally.
see where they're at, because when you change quarterbacks, it's not just affecting the quarterback, it's affecting the chemistry, the timing with the receivers, the timing with your offensive line. Offensive line is hearing a different voice.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that go into play, and especially this week, that since we may be missing a few guys, offensively. Is this the week you want to start a Hank, with some guys, key guys that might be out? So
Right.
you may end up starting Peyton and still playing Hank just because you have that veteran presence. So there's a lot of things to think about there. Like I said, eventually, but at the end of the day, regardless of what happens, Hank has to have reps because he's
Agreed.
always one play away from having to be the guy, but also in this situation, he needs to be prepared when we get into some of these big games. If you get thrown in there, he needs to have some type of experience.
Right. Because I think our opponent this week is both a blessing and a curse. And again, let me just reiterate, you can't look past anybody, lest we not forget what happened last season. Notre Dame learned that all too quickly this past week, losing to Northern Illinois. So you can't look past anybody. However, with the expectation of the discrepancy between these two teams and the caliber of athlete that you're seeing, this could be a game where Auburn ends up once again with a comfortable lead and can maybe do some things less geared toward game plan, opponent, blah, blah, blah. That is both a blessing and a curse if you get that opportunity. It's a blessing because, to your point, Hank can get some real reps, some real chemistry. Heck, I guess you could even say Peyton could get some reps, some chemistry, whatever, because it clearly seems like that's still lacking. The curse of that is this is the last time that you're going to have that opportunity, likely for the next several weeks. You dive in head first to back to back to back to back very tough SEC opponents, and in a couple weeks we go on the road for the first time, an element that no one has had to deal with yet. You want to talk about these helmet comms? These are very different devices to use in an away stadium versus a home stadium. So little nuances of the game are about to get exponentially harder for these teams, for Auburn in particular, for these players. So this week is your last chance to figure it out. So to your point, I 100% agree that this needs to be, I think we need to see Hank way more than Payton, regardless of what Payton looks like if he does in fact get the start, which I do kind of think Payton's going to start. But I would play Hank a lot more than Payton in this game. Not saying that that's necessarily going to be what we do moving forward, but this is the last time that Hank can get reps where it may not be the game on the line. I don't foresee that opportunity presenting itself again. And if you're not entirely sure about your starting quarterback, this is your last week to figure it out in a game.
Well, we talked about, right, the first 3 games of the season was supposed to be, they was going to move some guys around on the offensive line before they settle in on their first 5 before you get to SEC play. You didn't think you would be having to do that with your quarterback position. You thought about with Payton coming in as having a full off season, having an opportunity to do things as a leader with this team during the off season, and build chemistry and timing. You would think that this would be further along.
Yeah.
And last week's game just kind of like reminded all of us that, man, like we still got a ways to go. Is the talent getting better? Absolutely. It just takes time. You almost have to be 3 recruiting classes in to get out of the hole that we was dug,
Right.
a couple of years ago. So it definitely takes some time, but you got to get that position going in the right direction. It's been a couple of years now that position has kind of been kind of rough. We got to get that position going, and like I said, just create a competitive environment. That's all we ask. Create a competitive environment. May the best man wins, and then you move forward. It's not to say both won't end up playing most of the season. It may be that way, but at the end of the day, you never know until you try and see.
Yeah. And they're going to have to do that this week. Coach Freeze knows that. I'm hopeful that we'll get an indicator in our coaches' meetings on Friday, but there is a potential that we will all find out at the same time when they take the field on Saturday. We'll see how much he wants to divulge. But real quickly, before we wrap this one up, defensively, I thought first half to second half it was a different story. Yeah. And I think that Coach Durkin and the defensive side of the ball did a really good job with adjustments and impacting Cal's offense more in the second half. You saw it in person. What stood out to you? You already mentioned the defensive front. These corners are young. They're still trying to kind of prove themselves in the secondary, but adjustment wise, I thought you saw a good example of what they're capable of doing in halftime.
Oh yeah, after the first drive, Mendoza and Cal offense looked like I put on a clinic the first drive, and which normally happens. First 15 plays, everyone
scripted, yeah.
Every defense, so most guys know how to respond, but overall, I thought Malik Blockton had a good game. I thought Keyron Crawford had a good game to transfer from Arkansas State. I thought Austin Keys lining up at the end position did a really good job of creating rush pressure. But the star player of the game on defense was Keldrick Fall.
What a guy.
The first guy to record back-to-back sacks since 2003, Reggie Torbert. So,
wow.
So
write that one down.
Yeah, so it's been a long time, since that's happened. And this guy, it started right before the half. They saw something. They lined up Keldrick and Jalen McLeod on the same side to the right side of Cal's offensive line, and they created pressure. And they started the second half where the first half they kept giving up so many flat routes.
Yeah.
To Andres, the tight end for Cal. And the second half, they was all over it.
Right.
And they started hitting Mendoza. They started bringing pressures. They started overloading one side of the offensive line and getting him off his spot. So I thought overall our defensive front played really well. I thought secondary-wise, early in the game, we was getting beat on those back shoulder throws. We got to learn to get our head around quicker. Had a chance to tie the game with a game-changer interception. If
you got to have that.
to get that interception. It's a 14-14 ball game. At that point in time, you can spend all the momentum that Cal had, you give it back to Auburn.
Yep.
And those are game-changing plays that they made and we didn't make. Every
Agreed.
time they got a chance to get an interception, whether it's a diving interception, anything, they
They
intercepted.
made it.
And we didn't. So
That's a great point.
that's the things about the game is make the most of the opportunities when they present themselves. You never know what play is going to be the play to change the game.
Right.
And Kyle Lee did an absolutely great job of reading the route. You just gotta don't look at the end zone first. Just secure the catch first, and then worry about getting down the field. So that's a game-changing play that we missed. But overall, I feel like secondary-wise, having Jaron Thompson back there is a huge key. The transfer from Texas, he's such a communicator, such a guy that gets everybody going. Him and Dorn Mossy, both of those guys are really good communicators. So I expect this week, you're probably going to see some changes in the secondary a little bit. Sylvester Smith is a guy, pay attention to him, redshirt freshman.
Is Keontae healthy?
I think he was a little banged up, but
he just didn't have a game we're used to seeing from him.
He didn't have that spark last week that you're normally used to seeing from him. But expect to see it from him this week. So and probably see him a little bit more at nickel more than just corner. So JC Hart's the guy to keep an eye on, probably the fastest guy on the team. Probably start getting more reps out of him. Antonio Kite came in for Keontae at that corner position as well. So they're still trying to figure out a lot of these young guys in the secondary.
Right.
Overall, it's not like they gave up a whole lot. They did give up some big throws, but they didn't. They played bend but not break. They didn't give up big touchdown passes. And you can live with that. So I expect Coach Durkin this week to bring the heat a little bit against New Mexico. Not let them get comfortable and see if we can get victorious and get ready for SEC play.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I think New Mexico will come in fired up, as everyone is. I think that they probably looking at what New Mexico State did, and let's all make sure we're clear. These are two different teams. I have had so many people be like, we lost to them last year. Not the same. We played New Mexico State last year.
Played them again.
We are playing New Mexico this year. Different. Similar but different. But they will come in here juiced, looking at what, the upset that happened last year, looking at how susceptible we were this past week against Cal, and really seeing how Cal's defense was able to really kind of control the narrative of the game. So they will come in juiced. Their quarterback, Devin Dampier, is a guy that has led their offense, and they've kind of had a unique structure. They played a week 0 game and a week 1 game, and then had a bye week 2. So they're coming off a bye week, which is interesting. Wow. They played Arizona to start the season, and that one was closer than the score indicates. Arizona ended up taking off, and it was a comfortable 30-point win, but they hung with them at the beginning. And then they had a game week 1, and they steadily improved offensively. Their third down efficiency improved by 25% from week 1 to week 2. So their offense has made a lot of strides. Their head coach is Bronco Mendenhall, who was the head coach at Virginia. He's been at BYU. So he's been at big programs, and he'll have his guys fired up. They also have cornerback Noah Pola Gates, who is a transfer from Nebraska. So they've got guys on there that are familiar with playing big Power 5 ball and in big environments. So they'll be fired up, but I definitely think that this is an opportunity for Auburn to answer questions that they still have right now, and hopefully have them answered as we head in to SEC play. But real quickly, let me ask you, week 3 we're in, who's most impressive to you right now, team-wise?
Man,
still early, but
Texas looks strong.
Texas does look strong. I agree.
I don't see a weakness there. They look strong. Ohio State played, played Akron and played Western Michigan, I think. It's the two teams they played. So they haven't,
been tested.
Got into a schedule where they'd be tested. I think this is their first week. They play Michigan State this week. So we'll kind of see what happens with Ohio State. Georgia looks strong.
Yeah.
Those Texas and Georgia. Alabama to me still struggling a little bit, trying to find their way.
Yeah, South Florida was comfy in there for a little while.
Yeah, they had a shot. They had a shot for a while.
I want to see Ole Miss in a real matchup too, because I think they look great, but I can't really quantify that against their
Ole Miss was
opponents.
great offensively,
Mhm.
and so you never know what their defense is going to look like, right? That's been their Achilles heel. It's never been
Yeah.
their offense. It's always been their defense. So until they get
Yeah.
against a pivotal foe, we really won't know much about them. I'll just say this: we won't know much about a lot of these teams until 4 weeks of games have been played.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Texas and Georgia are leading things right now, but nonetheless, we are gonna bring as much excitement to this one as we possibly can. Like always, Jay will be on the radio call. I'll be sidelines for this one. We're gonna be on ESPN2 Saturday night at 6:30, the first night game of the season. So excited to see that light show, and then we'll get ready for some SEC play. So it's also homecoming, so hopefully a lot of family, friends reconvening this weekend, enjoying a beautiful weekend on the plains. So I'm excited to head on home and be part of it. And we will bring back all the information possible next week on our episode. So make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already done that. You'll get a notification every time we release an episode. You can also find us on YouTube if you prefer to watch in video format. We are on Bleav's YouTube channel. Just search Everything Auburn. Bleav in Everything Auburn, and you'll find us every week as well. So appreciate you guys listening and following along. Enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll be back next week to break it all down. War Eagle.
War Eagle. Peace.